What's going on? Did y'all see the interviews today? Sophie Cunningham just exposed Stephanie White. Flat out exposed her. This is wild, y'all. This is crazy.
Another video, and it looked like Sophie Cunningham has set the record straight about this Indiana Fever offense.
Sophie Cunningham just shook the Indiana Fever organization to its core with a brutally honest assessment of what's going wrong, and she didn't hold back. In a rare and revealing interview, Cunningham pointed directly at the team's offensive, system and coaching decisions, especially when it comes to Caitlin Clark's role. And what's
going on? I mean, I know what's going on. Stephanie White's a bum and needs to be fired. That's what's going on.
She said could have major implications for Stephanie White's future. When asked about the team's inconsistency, Cunningham made it clear this isn't about minor adjustments or bad execution. It's a fundamental problem with the system itself. She said flat out that the team needs a completely different offense when Clark is on the floor. That's not just a critic, it's a direct challenge to White's entire coaching philosophy. The most telling moment came when Cunningham said, "We got some flow when
season. You guys are still experiencing some inconsistency, whether it be on and off the court. Obviously, rosters change too. Just what do you think going forward you guys need to do to get some consistency?"
Man, I think that everyone saw that we kind of got some flow when Kate was hurt and our offense was clicking. But now we have to have a new offense when she's in there because she just brings that much to the game. And so we have to adjust. And I think
Kate was hurt and our offense was clicking. But now we have to have a new offense when she's in there because she just brings that much. That's essentially saying the offense works better without your star player. And when she returns, the whole system has to change to accommodate her. It's a devastating indictment. Translation: the current system can't support your most talented player, and that's a coaching failure. Stephanie White has been sticking to a rigid motion offense all season, an approach that Cunningham just exposed as totally ineffective when Clark is on the court, rather than letting Clark run the show the way she did so successfully at.
I think all of us just want it now. We know what the potential of this team can be, but we can't think about that. You really have to take day to day and stuff that worked here, we need to carry it over to tomorrow's game. We have a lot of games coming up in I think like 7 days or whatnot, and so it's mentally making sure that we're good. It's physically making sure we're getting recovery, making sure we're taking care of our bodies off the court, but we're trying to figure it out, and I think you guys see it. I think we're all a little frustrated. We're trying to figure out what's clicking, what's not clicking, what works for us defensively, but at the end of the day, I think what we can hang our hat on is not getting outworked, making sure that we're the aggressors, making sure that we're getting boards, controlling what we can control. And I think we need to do a better job at that. And if we can do that, I think stuff offensively will open up for us.
Iowa. This system forces her into a secondary role, running off screens and spotting up for jumpers, rather than letting her create with the ball in her hands. Cunningham's message was clear: enough is enough. Let Caitlin Clark be Caitlin Clark. What makes Cunningham's comments even more significant is her status as a veteran. She's not some rookie venting after a tough loss. She's been in this league, understands how teams function, and knows what it means to call out a coach publicly. For her to be this direct means the frustration has reached a boiling point. This isn't about one bad game or even one bad week, it's about a system that's been broken from the start. The timing couldn't be worse for Stephanie White. The Fever are coming off a rough stretch, including a blowout loss to Golden State, and now one of their own players is essentially telling the media the coach
will open up for us.
Do you feel like that's part of your role, I guess, when it comes to aggression, grit, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just making sure our energy is where it needs to be. It's making sure our focus is where it needs to be. I think we're all a little bit exhausted, but everyone is. We have a lot of games this season. That's part of being a pro. And what a blessing that we get to dribble an orange basketball for a living. And so sometimes it's taking a step back and having a better perspective and being grateful for it. But I think tomorrow night you're going to see a lot of fight. We're starting to get a little bit pissed off, and that's, I think, what we need. We need a fire under our butts, and we should have had yesterday. We have to give credit to them. They're a great team, the Valkyries, but it's not to our standard. And so we need to. We're running out of time, to be honest, and I think that it's going to light a fire under our butts. And so hopefully you'll see kind of that energy shift tomorrow.
Coaching system doesn't work. That's not something any organization can ignore. Cunningham's comments cut deep, because they highlight the core flaw in White's approach. Instead of tailoring the offense to Clark's strengths, White seems committed to a system that doesn't suit her. That's coaching malpractice, especially when you have a generational talent like Clark. The read and react offense that Clark excelled in at Iowa and during her best moments last season is designed for a player who thrives with the ball in her hands, who can read the defense, dictate pace, and make everyone around her better. White's motion offense, on the other hand, seems to level the playing field between all 5 players, at the cost of marginalizing your best one. What's even more concerning is that Cunningham's comments suggest the team essentially has to play 2 different styles depending on whether Clark is on the floor. That's a sign of a team without a clear identity, and it puts a spotlight on coaching as the source of that inconsistency. Cunningham also hinted that players are frustrated and confused, saying they're trying to figure out what's clicking, what's not clicking. In pro sports, when players openly admit they don't know what's going on offensively, that's not a personnel issue, it's a schematic one. Cunningham also mentioned that
go on runs. That's what's supposed to happen in a game. But how do you handle that? How can you mentally and physically manage that? And so I do think that's part of my role, is making sure that the team stays together, making sure that, if we get a bad call or something bad happens, you come in, what are you going to do? What's the next play that we're going to do in order for us to get it back? And so we're trying to figure it out. We're all new. We have a new roster, but hopefully this one stays consistent.
Players are feeling exhausted and starting to get a little bit pissed off. That kind of language, especially from a typically composed veteran, suggests that the locker room atmosphere is deteriorating. Players aren't just losing games, they're losing trust in the system. They know they have the talent to be better. They can see the potential, but the system in place isn't letting them reach it. Sophie isn't just speaking for herself here. She's echoing a sentiment that's clearly being felt throughout the locker room. When a respected leader speaks this bluntly, it usually means players have already tried to raise concerns privately and haven't been heard. That makes this even more damaging for White, because it suggests the coaching staff is either ignoring player feedback or incapable of making the necessary changes. This isn't about effort, attitude, or chemistry, it's about fit. And right now, the offensive system doesn't fit the players, especially not Caitlin Clark. That's why this kind of criticism lands hard with front officers. It's specific, it's tactical, and it points to a fixable issue if there's a willingness to adapt. But if the coach refuses to change, the pressure will keep building. Cunningham's comment about the need for more aggression is also worth noting. Aggression comes from confidence, and confidence comes from clarity. If players don't know what they're supposed to be doing or don't believe in the system, they won't play aggressive, they'll hesitate, and in a league this competitive, hesitation leads to failure. At the end of the day, Cunningham didn't just drop a few critical sacks. She laid bare what everyone watching this team has been thinking for weeks. The Fever have the talent, but they don't have a system that lets that talent thrive. And unless something changes soon, they risk wasting the prime of a generational player and fracturing a locker room that's already showing signs of strain. Sophie Cunningham's recent comments were more than just post-game frustration. They were a direct and calculated indictment of the Indiana Fever's coaching staff and offensive system. She didn't single anyone out maliciously, but the message was clear: what's happening on the floor isn't working, and it's not because of the players. She pointed out that players become tentative and less aggressive when they're unclear on their responsibilities, a direct reflection of poor system design. Her reference to the team playing better defense when Clark was out wasn't a knock on Clark as a player, it was a subtle critique of the coaching staff's inability to create a defensive scheme that works with their current personnel. That's especially telling coming from a veteran like Sophie, who understands both on-court dynamics and locker room politics. What's even more embarrassing for the coaching staff is that fans and content creators have been pointing out these same issues for months, when people outside the organization can see the problems clearer than those running the team. That's a sign of serious professional failure. Sophie's acknowledgement that the roster is new and still developing wasn't an excuse, it was an implicit reminder that the coaching staff has failed to adapt their system to fit the players they actually have. Good coaches adjust their game plan to maximize their personnel, not the other way around. The emotion in her voice when discussing the team's inconsistency suggested something deeper than typical growing pains. It sounded like players feel like they're being set up to fail. Her remark about running out of time hit especially hard. It suggests a locker room that's losing patience, losing faith, and losing belief in the current direction. Players know what they're capable of and they see a system that's keeping them from getting there. When Sophie said the team needs a fire under our butts, that wasn't just a motivational cliche. It was a clear sign that she doesn't believe the current coaching staff has instilled the kind of competitive culture successful teams rely on. Motivation, energy, and effort are byproducts of belief in the system, belief in the leadership, and belief that the work will pay off. Right now, that belief seems to be missing. The fact that Sophie was willing to go public with all of this says a lot. Whether she had the support of teammates or was simply fed up enough not to care, this was a turning point. Public criticism from a veteran is never just about venting, it's a signal that private conversations haven't worked, and something more drastic is needed. The most frustrating part for fans and players alike is that this team has the talent. They have Caitlin Clark, a generational offensive engine. They have experienced contributors like Sophie. They have the depth and the skill to compete with anyone, but coaching is holding them back. Sophie's comments stood in stark contrast to what other successful teams around the league are doing. Coaches in places like New York and Minnesota understand how to build around their stars, whether it's Sabrina Ionescu or Nafisa Collier. Those teams create systems that amplify their players' strengths. Indiana is doing the opposite. This disconnect is starting to affect the team's identity. When players don't trust the system, they start pressing, trying to make things happen on their own instead of trusting teammates and playing within a cohesive structure. That leads to the kind of up and down, inconsistent performances the Fever have shown all season, and the timing couldn't be worse. With the season hitting a critical stretch, instead of building chemistry and making a playoff push, the Fever are dealing with public criticism from within. That's not just a distraction, it's a symptom of a deeper organizational fracture. What makes all of this more impactful is that Sophie isn't known for throwing people under the bus. She's a respected voice who usually keeps internal matters private. Her decision to speak out suggests she doesn't think the situation can be fixed quietly anymore. That kind of escalation usually only happens when players feel like they're not being heard or worse. Ignored. Her mention of the team getting outworked also reflects poorly on preparation and leadership. Teams with strong culture and accountability don't consistently lose the effort battle. That's a reflection of what's being emphasized or not by the coaching staff. When Sophie said the team needs to control what we can control, it hinted at another painful truth. Players feel like too much is outside their control right now. When you don't believe in your system, your roles, or your coaching, that helplessness sets in. That's how locker rooms fall apart. Difference in the team's identity when Clark is on versus off the floor is another major red flag. Professional teams can't afford to reinvent themselves every time one player enters or exits the lineup. That speaks to a lack of a coherent philosophy and poor roster coaching. Alignment. All of this is coming to a head at the worst possible moment. This is when teams should be peaking, locking in for a playoff run. Instead, the Fever are unraveling in public. Sophie's words weren't just about tactics or rotations. They spoke to a fundamental disagreement about how this team should be coached, who it should be built around, and how to get the best out of its players. When those disagreements become public, something usually has to change. Either the coaching staff adjusts, or the organization decides to go in another direction. Because at this point, it's clear, the players have spoken, and they're not buying what Stephanie White is selling.